our chief executive, the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Sir Lynden Pindling.
To his supporters, he is known as Moses, the man who led the nation to independence. Under his stewardship, the Bahamas prospered.
We've never, ever had to seek aid from anybody. We've never, ever received aid from anybody. We've always managed to make our way. And in so doing, by the grace of God, we've been able to build up here in the Bahamas the third highest standard of living outside U.S. and Canada in the whole hemisphere.
It is the proximity of the U.S. and Canada that made it prosper. Millions of tourists come each year seeking sun and sand in an open and friendly society.
On that dollar.
Tourists bring their dollars, and so do investors, who like the efficient banking system and its strict banking secrecy.
There are two pillars to our economy today. The one is tourism, the other is banking.
There was a third pillar, the drug trade. It was dependent on the other two. Tourism meant casual customs enforcement. The banking system meant easy money laundering. Norman Solomon is a Bahamian and former member of Parliament.
The drug money really gave this economy a tremendous boost, tremendous. Home building, boats, motors, cars, jewelry, buying of land, you name it. I mean, a lot of people were involved in it. The thing was too big to control, but I don't think that the government really did anything like they could have done to squelch it.
By 1980, most of the cocaine entering the United States was coming through the Bahamas. The center of activity was the island of Norman's Key. Between 1978 and 1982, Norman's Key was a drug clearinghouse with a paved runway big enough for jets, hangars, dormitories for staff, and an armed security force. U.S. drug agents felt the government had to know. Robert Merkel, U.S. Attorney in Florida at the time, was one of those watching Norman's Key.
It was not like a dark alley where drug dealing was hard to find or locate. It was an island, the Atlantic Ocean, which was wide open to view. And the question arises, first of all, how did that go on for so many years?
Norman's Key had been taken over by this man, a Colombian named Carlos Lehder. He was the world's most important drug trafficker.
Did you ever meet Carlos Lehder? Yes. I think I probably met him. Carlos Lehder was one of those who came into the Bahamas and said, I am an investor. I am going to build a marina and hotel on one of these small islands. I might well have done.
Is there any way Lynden Pindling couldn't have known that Carlos Lehder was a drug dealer?
I can't think of any. What's a businessman intending to develop an island as a resort kicking tourists off at machine gun point? Businessmen don't do that.
But it seemed to have been common knowledge in American law enforcement that Norman's Key was being used as a transit point for cocaine on its way to the United States.
That is not a statement of fact, Morley, unfortunately. It was not common knowledge. The first incarnation we got was 1978, and the documentary evidence is there to support that. And by summer of 1979, the police moved in and shut it down.
Well, that's hogwash. The evidence puts Carlos Lehder on Norman's Key as late as June of 1982.
3 years after the Prime Minister says he closed it down.
Says he shut it down. Yeah, the bulk of the cocaine that was going through Norman's Key came through in 79, 80, and 81. So the Prime Minister, if he's claiming he shut it down in 1979, has been in the sun too long, I think.
In 1979, Norman Solomon was the opposition leader in the Bahamian Parliament. When he went to see what was happening at Norman's Key, he was threatened away by guards armed with machine guns.
Then I went back to Parliament and asked for a committee to investigate Norman's Key, and the government turned it down, wouldn't let me have it. Did that twice.
Well, the conclusion one can draw from what you're suggesting is that the reason they didn't was because the government was, in effect, itself in the drug business.
It's not an unreasonable conclusion. This was affecting the entire fabric of this country. And the government of the country, in Parliament, doesn't let Parliament investigate it? Come on already.
Several police raids were made on Norman's Key, but somehow the drug dealers always knew the police were coming. Once a policeman put Carlos Lehder in handcuffs, but the officer in charge ordered him released. In 1983, NBC News broadcast a story on Norman's Key alleging that the Prime Minister and other Bahamian officials had been paid off to the tune of $100,000 a month. Pindling furiously denied the allegations.
I think there's a conspiracy between NBC, some federal prosecutors, some low-level enforcement officers who want to make a name for themselves, and the network who wants to make a big headline. There is a propensity on the part of some who feel that every black leader is either incompetent or corrupt. We have set an example here of competence unparalleled. Our success they can't understand. They would wish to attribute our success to corruption, which it is not. They are unable to solve the drug problem at home only. We are convenient. We're right offshore. The Bahamas and Pindling.
The NBC report sent the Bahamas into shock. There was a call for a full investigation. Pindling ordered a commission of inquiry to investigate drug corruption. The commission concluded that almost every level of society had been touched by corruption: customs, immigration, bankers, lawyers, cabinet ministers. As for the police, it found that certain officers had taken bribes to ensure Carlos Lehder's freedom, and it found complicity on the part of senior police officials. But the commission stopped short of implicating Pindling. The Prime Minister declared himself vindicated and sued NBC.
I sued them, Morley. I first sued them here. They hid in the ivory towers in New York, didn't come to answer. I won the case by default. I didn't get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. So I decided to sue in a neutral jurisdiction. I prefer to win my case on merit, and that's where the matter lies now.
Pindling sued NBC again, this time in Canada. After the suit was filed, Carlos Lehder was arrested in Colombia and brought to the United States for trial. Robert Merkel led the prosecution.
Witness after witness in the Carlos Lehder case testified to bribes to Bahamian officials, ranging from low-level police officials to immigration officers, all the way up to the Prime Minister of the Bahamas.
Absolute rubbish. I've never been paid by anybody to do anything illegal in this country or anywhere. I love this country too much. I will not do anything that I believe would damage this country. Whenever those allegations were made, they were made by convicted criminals trying to plea bargain themselves out of some severe sentence.
Many of those witnesses were dubious. Sir Lynden claims they were part of a vendetta by U.S. prosecutors.
But surely it wouldn't surprise anyone, given the pervasive nature of drug money and the enormous sums involved, that a lot of officials would not be bribable in this country.
I could not swear on a Bible that no one was ever reached. What I think I could almost swear is no high officials were reached.
But one high official has been indicted in the United States. Kendall Nottage was Pindling's law partner and had served in his cabinet as Minister of Youth. He was indicted in Boston for laundering drug money. And there were two more indictments that U.S. officials considered important. Everett Bannister had been a friend and business associate of the Prime Minister. He was indicted in Florida for drug trafficking. And Nigel Bowe, a prominent Bahamian lawyer, was also indicted in Florida on narcotics charges. The Prime Minister says they broke no Bahamian laws. To date, none has been extradited. The country has not dealt harshly with corruption. The Commission of Inquiry concluded that Howard Smith, the Assistant Commissioner of Police, had accepted bribes from known drug dealers. But the Attorney General of the Bahamas would not grant a key witness the immunity he sought to testify, and the case was dropped. Then, according to Cecil Wallace Whitfield, leader of the Bahamian opposition, the government went so far as to give Smith a job.
He was retired in the public interest, and then the government sends out the wrong signals in the country by giving him the cafeteria concession at the Ministry of Works. And in addition to that, gives him contracts to build sidewalks for the people. Wrong signals being sent out again. That suggests to me, too, that he's being looked after.
The Commission of Inquiry's investigation of the Prime Minister's personal finances raised more questions. There was $3.5 million that he was pressed to account for. Some of it was identified by the Commission as coming from the same Everett Bannister indicted in the U.S. for drug trafficking.
Are you convinced, are you satisfied that none of the money you received was tainted?
As satisfied as anybody could reasonably be, I have no reason to believe whatsoever that any funds that I have ever used or have come into my possession had any connection with drugs. Where did my funds come from? My funds came from my income, my funds came from business transactions, and my funds came from contributions made by well-to-do business friends in this country who made a contribution to the building of my house more or less in the same way that friends of President Reagan contributed to his home in California. Let us look at the facts. The facts are that the efforts of the Bahamas in the war against drugs surpasses that of any other country, including America's. We are the frontline state. The Bahamas. Our police and sailors in our military that we have thrown into the fight, something the United States has not yet done. Laid their lives on the line night and day to keep drugs off the streets of Miami and Washington and New York.
The allegations against Pindling set off a minor skirmish among U.S. officials. Robert Merkel and his colleagues wanted to press on with the investigation of Lynden Pindling. Higher authorities were uncomfortable with the idea of a friendly head of state being indicted in the United States.
There was hostility, not only in the State Department, but in the Department of Justice, to any formal charges being brought against high-ranking Bahamian officials. In fact, I received a call after the Noriega indictment. I received a call from an upper-level official in the Department of Justice telling me, quote, "We don't want any more Noriegas up here." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, we don't want any surprise indictments."
Was he referring to Pindling?
Yes.
Lynden Pindling ran for a sixth term in 1987 and soundly defeated the opposition candidate who ran on an anti-corruption campaign. Pindling seems to be as popular as ever.